Hello, wild ones. This is Cole Adams, and today is a scrap bin day. I'm working on these little squirrel projects by using this joint compound tape from my garage. I pulled it up and just decided to use it as an art supply. And it is just the carrier for some eco-printed scraps. I did paint out the backs with just a little bit of gouache color. So that's on the opposite side of this side of the tape, which is where I'm adding, I'm using my double stick tape and adding these beautiful eco-printed scraps. What I love about eco-printing and rust dyeing scraps is that they have this like really earthy color combo that is really varied, and it works great with old swatched paints. Some of that big large piece is an eco print with some lodge wood dye on it, and this is a paint sample that I decided I didn't need anymore, but I thought would work really well in this scroll of just beautiful materials. I think you could use these for collecting quotes, or what I'm interested in doing is having some kind of pre-collage scraps that I can take on the road with me and use in my sketchbooks. So I'm thinking I'm probably going to end up cutting up these scrap scrolls, but we'll see. That is my Scotch big double back tape tool, but you don't need that. You can use glue stick for this. That is a really pretty eco-printed with chicken wire piece, which I really love. And these are some of my favorite little scraps, but I've already used the main body of them in other work. So this is kind of similar to a scrap quilt where you get to kind of revisit all these old papers. And I just noticed that my bin was really full and I needed to do some scrapping projects. So I made some little books up, and after making those books, I had even more little edge scraps. So this is a great way to use up those littler, tinier bits that aren't needed for a bigger project. But I love that you can just use them up. I'm aspiring to a zero waste studio space where I don't throw a lot away. And a lot of these at one point might have gone in the bin for me. And I love finding ways to use these. Got a sneeze there, pardon me. It's just a great way to use these kind of unlovable little bits that need to get used up, and they still have inherent beauty even though they're teeny tiny. So as I attach them, I know I'm going to go back in with my sewing machine, so I'm not super worried about getting them firmly stuck. If you were worried about that, and if you don't have a sewing machine and aren't planning to sew them, I would probably use an acrylic gel medium to glue them, or a Mod Podge, or a watered down glue. But because I know I'm going in to sew over the top of this, I wanted to use a more dry glue, and this double stick tape I wouldn't trust for the long run, but to get it to the sewing machine, I totally trust it, and I can sew through it without it gumming up the needle too bad. I also used some glue stick on this project, and that was a little less successful with being able to easily sew through it. I think I needed to wait a little bit longer to let it dry. But as you can tell, I'm just building up the layers. I really like a torn edge, so I'm taking and shifting the little worked edge underneath, if I can, the previous scrap. I should probably just attach it the opposite way, which would be easier. Leave the torn edge and then work back from there. I think I did that on the next few, but this was my first sample that I was kind of figuring it out. I did go back through and tear off all the extra little bits, and I've got the work bowl right there, the scrap bowl, and those little bits go right back in and get used in later projects. So I kind of liked cleaning it up a little bit, but not perfectly. But I didn't want a bunch of little sticks sticking out from there like this. So I'm just pinching off the extra, but leaving kind of a more rough edge. I think that in the end looks better. So now, after I figured it out, I'm taking and doing 3 scrolls at once. So I've got 3 different strips of pre-painted drywall. They call it drywall tape, but it's really a paper. There isn't any glue on it that you can activate. So I'm taking that and just walking down all 3 scraps at once now. And it's kind of nice because my scraps are about 3 to 2 widths wide. So I can kind of do them all at once by just pulling a big long piece of scrap out and making the tears at this point, and just walking across each piece. And I like it because you make a decision to change the tonal color of the first scrap, and it kind of works for all the others. So it's a neat way to create kind of an assembly line. I did need to weight down the edges to keep the scraps from like kind of wanting to fall off my workbench. So just be aware as you're working this way, use something to hold down those edges. I'm still auditioning. I'm still having a think about what will work as I'm working through this. But what I love about it is it's kind of an easy place to get into flow state because you're just kind of working through your bin and grabbing things kind of willy-nilly. So now I've brought it over to the sewing machine. I'm attaching a little bit of fabric to the end. That little dark patch is fabric. This is my previous, I like to chain stitch. So this is my previous thing I had on the sewing machine. And I'm going to cut that off. And then I attached a little bit of fabric so I could add that as a way to attach it to a stick or a treasure jar. I think that these would be really cool around a jar, so you could have a water jar or a treasure jar. This is a free motion foot. I started using the non-free motion and I was like, ooh, I think this would be a much better free motion project. And when you use a free motion foot on a machine, it's kind of open in the front and you can really see what you're doing, but you also turn off the feed dogs on your sewing machine so you can go in all directions. And I like to use it where I have a hand on either side of the work so I can make swirls and kind of create this sewn line that's really varied. I also have a variegated thread in here, and I end up changing that out for more of a gray thread. I think that the colored thread just stands out a little bit more than I wanted it to. But I will definitely use the scroll, even though it is got some bright thread on it. But I really love how the stitches look over the top of the Ecoprinted scraps. It's a really pretty contrast. So there is the finished piece, And then I end up rolling it around a little jar that has, oh, and this is one more thing. When you're switching from one scroll to the next, it's really easy just to sew off of one and back onto the other, which is a chain stitch. So you can just clip it and not have any long threads wasted either. So this is my finished piece. It's a little scroll. I wrapped it around this plastic vial to make a place where, if I'm taking it out on the road, a place for little shells or little things I pick up off the ground. I hope you like this project. Please take care of yourself, each other, and the earth.